Nothing Personal starts in 30 seconds. It's just business. This is Nothing Personal.
Here you go.
Chopped off. That's the Nothing Personal word of the day for Wednesday, January 29th, 2025. When you say chopped off, I say Marie Antoinette. When you say chopped off, I say the head of a snake. Happy Chinese New Year, by the way. It's the year of the snake. That would have been an amazing intro if I had put that together before saying it in my head. Chopped off. I try not to use that expression. I think of Mary Jo Babbitt. That's a name that's probably no one's heard of. Just look it up. Chopped off. Nothing good happens. Mark Davis takes to the podium, introducing his new coach. It's all supposed to be about Pete Carroll. 73 years old, spry as an elementary school kid, excited as a high schooler going to prom, walks in with his backpack. There's a pep in his step. Vegas, baby. You feel like he's hanging on to swingers just a little too long. Lorena Bobbitt is who it is. I don't know why I thought Mary Jo Babbitt, but it is Lorena Bobbitt. Did you have to look that up, Coca? Or was that sort of in your head? You knew that one? Nice. Chopped off. That's something that all men know. Like, don't anger someone enough so that's even a possibility. So Pete Carroll walks into the press conference, and I'm watching the video of it, and I'm thinking, man, he's spry, looking good. It's going to be the focus. It's a new day. We're going to hear about Tom Brady. We're going to hear about his involvement. We're going to hear Mark Davis and Pete Carroll talk. And all that Mark Davis wanted us to know, like the main takeaway from the press conference introducing Pete Carroll, is, boy, did we get screwed by the NFL because Jon Gruden's head was chopped off. I spent the better part of yesterday, mid to late evening, thinking about this story, whether or not I liked it as the top story, the lead of our show today. And I did because it shows something that's going on that got a little attention, but clearly is a festering, pus-filled sore in the dome of Mark Davis. You remember the Jon Gruden situation. Forget the caricature that he's become. At the time, Jon Gruden was a recherche football executive and football head coach who had a lot of power and was taken down in what could only be described as self-inflicted, in that emails that he had sent to various people that showed various levels of prurient behavior and thoughts. Bad timing. There's never a good time to think the things or say the things or write the things that he did. Were his emails leaked? The Raiders have claimed that forever. Jon Gruden has claimed that forever. Someone stole the emails, got into the server. It doesn't matter. I've always enjoyed that, the old technicality defense. I did rob the bank, but you did an unlawful seizure of my property. You didn't have the proper warrant. You didn't give me my Miranda rights. As a consequentialist, I find all of those things hard to believe, though I do, of course, appreciate the Constitution, obviously. I appreciate the rights of all citizens, all people. I get it. But the old defense of, yeah, I'm racist, I'm sexist, I'm basically pig-like, babe-like, truffles be damned, but no one was supposed to know. Here's a little piece of advice. If you feel as though you have something to say, always assume It's going to be on the front page of the paper or the lead on X, or it will be published somehow in the sky like a Batman light. And if you are writing something to anyone, no matter how private, it can be on any of the crazy messenger apps where you can hide all your stuff. And God knows everyone does, photos, etc. Just assume that someone's going to see it. And if you can live with that, fine. If you can't, then you ought not to send it and do the things or say the things you want to say or do in person, respectfully. Jon Gruden basically torpedoed his career, and his idea of resuscitation is now in the form of a Dave Portnoy buttressed career. And boy, he's buttressed a lot of careers. There's no doubt about that. Doing it through social media posts that seem awkward and weird. He's no longer employable by the NFL. He doesn't seem like a serious person anymore. And that's the path of the heel that he chose to go down. I'm in for all of it. But when Mark Davis is on the podium and he tells us, and I'm quoting him, that bringing in Tom Brady was bringing in somebody on the football side that I had been lacking here in this organization. Back in 2018 with Jon Gruden, he was somebody that I brought in and really expected to be that person. That's only 6 years ago. On the football side, that would bring stability to the organization. This is him talking about Jon Gruden. He had a 10-year contract, and his head was chopped off. And we were put in a really bad position as an organization. What's he referring to? He's referring to the fact that he had a fight with Roger Goodell because he wanted Jon Gruden maybe get fined, get a little slap on the wrist. There's no way that you're going to make me fire him. There's no way you're going to suspend him. You can't blame him for this. And Roger Goodell said, he did it. These are his emails. Well, you didn't get them correctly. Doesn't matter. And Mark Davis then went on, and remember the whole Antonio Pierce coaching situation and all the mess of trying to get Tom Brady on as minority owner. That conversation was easy to dissect. Hey, Tom, I'd like you to come help me on the football side. Hey, Mark, I'm happy to do it. Give me a piece. Well, Tom, you can only get a piece. Can you afford it? Well, let's go to the NFL and see if we can get a lower valuation so I can give you more for the money you're going to give, which you're going to have to go out and get funding for the way Derek Jeter did with Bruce Sherman. You're going to have to go find a money guy because you can be a quarterback all you want. You can be a pitchman all you want. You can be the GOAT all you want. The level of wealth required to invest in a football team, the cash required, the credit required is a different type of rich. So he ends up doing a deal with Tom Brady. Remember how delayed it got, how many issues there were with the other owners. They didn't want to vote for it. And then you remember that Tom Brady signed a huge Fox deal. Still doesn't make you rich enough to be a true investor in a football team, but it's a good deal. 375 over 10, immediately went into the problems surrounding conflict of interest as he's about to call the Super Bowl on February 9th while he's interviewing coaches, etc. Ends up with Pete Carroll, not Ben Johnson. He tells you how involved he is. All of this is known. So if you're Mark Davis sitting at the table, what do you think is the best plan? What do you think his PR people said to him? Did they say, here's what we're going to do? We're going to introduce Pete, and he's going to sit right next to you, but make sure you get out there that Tom Brady gives you credibility on the football side and that it's too bad what happened to Jon Gruden. There's no PR person worth his weight in sand who would do that. And Mark Davis, I can only say to you, if someone adjacent to you is listening or you, if your PR people, crisis PR people or football PR people told you this was the good plan, fire them. If you went over their head and said, I'm going to do this, even though they said not to, then you got to start listening to them. Because you basically should have been focusing on the fact you've had 2 postseason appearances since 2003. You are trying to get it right. You think you've gotten it right, and you are excited. You're excited about the man right here, Pete Carroll. That's what I would have done. I sat down and had conversations so many times during my career about players we traded, which is good because we traded so many players. Here's how it would work. We would have a payroll that I would work on with the CFO. I would go to the owner and say, this is our financial situation at this payroll. You can raise the payroll, and that will increase our financial issues. We can decrease the payroll and help solve our financial issues. If we increase the payroll, you can expect blank increase in gate revenue, et cetera. No increase in broadcast revenue or central fund revenue or any sort of shared revenue. If we decrease the payroll, here's where I think attendance can go down. Here's the risk. How many fewer people will come? It's hard to get fewer people than we had, so I never viewed it as a huge risk. So we're going back and forth. We have a payroll, then we work with the baseball people. You put together your team. Then I do other meetings where I bring in the marketing guy, the sales guy. It's like a VP meeting. You got your CFO there, your general counsel, got your president of baseball operations, and you're talking about a player. Hey, what do you think? When we play the blanks again at home, should we honor this player? And we would go through the conversation. And there's different levels of honor. You can do a giveaway. You can do a bobblehead for an old player. Nope, never agreed to that. You can do a quick pan during the national anthem while they're standing there if they do, or during the first inning. Or you can take a beat when the player comes up to bat or when the player comes into pitch to allow fans to acknowledge, to allow the player to acknowledge. All the way up to a video of the highlights of that player when he was on your team, to the possibility of a gift presentation before the game. Everything's on the table. It never occurred to me, in 18 years, it never once occurred to me that there would be a player who would be angry and disappointed with the choice we made. Paul George, bless your soul, Paul George, you are in the Hall of Fame of business. Your 4-year, $211 million max contract with Philadelphia is up there with Joel Embiid's bad contract. You've played in 30 of 45 games for the Sixers this year. That's it. You've missed 33% of the games. It's incredible. So here's my question. When you meet the media and you're talking to yourself or to your fans, why is it that you would say that you're disappointed that the Pacers, your old team, did not do a tribute video for you? I need to talk about this. I understand. Paul George said, listen, I was very involved in helping the Pacers organization. We had a great team. Remember the Lance Stevenson whisper in your ear team? And he then made a decision, as I recall, that he wanted to leave the Pacers. The Pacers organization was upset because Paul George, in the era of great player empowerment, had said, I don't like you anymore. I am going to upgrade. I want someone a little more attractive. I want a city a little more cosmopolitan. I want a team a little more interesting. All of which is his right. None of which needs to be rewarded by the team that he left. It doesn't feel good when a player walks into your office or you hear it from an agent because players don't want to sort of approach you and be upset. But you hear from either the agent or the player, hey, they don't want to be confrontational. So they say, yeah, we think we're going to explore our options. That's a popular phrase that's used. Is there any way that there is a market for my player? Is there any way that you see a road to your team being better by moving our player or letting him go early before free agency? I've heard it all. How does it make me feel when I hear that? It depends on my feeling for the player. The best example And we got criticized for this, Coca, and I don't know that it's Googleable, but we got a ton of bad press in Florida when we did not do anything special for Bobby Cox when he was retiring. And Bobby is obviously a Hall of Famer, one of the great managers of all time for the Braves. We had Freddie Gonzalez manage our team, one of our great managers who also managed the Braves, who was under the tutelage of Bobby Cox. And we just did not want to honor him because our view is that I don't want to honor someone who basically kicked the crap out of us and did it smiling the whole time with his thumb on our neck. He can go get celebrated elsewhere. I didn't feel it was my responsibility to make it even more obvious to our fans that we were not good enough to ever get by the Braves. I don't know, Coca, if that's anywhere available on the internet, but that is a true story. Cox got hurt when that happened. And he talked about our owner. And as Coca is reminding me in my left ear, thank you, Coca, Bobby Cox said of our owner, that guy doesn't appreciate anything, which of course is total horse hockey. He appreciates his players that are on his team, and he takes care of the players on his team in a way that if you're a player on his team, you're aware of. If you're outside of his team, you're not as aware. You can talk to many of our older players, whether it's Dan Ugla, Cody Ross, talk to Stanton, talk to Logan Morrison, talk to Yelich. Talk to anyone you want. Go back and talk to Conine or Lowell or Castillo or Jack McKeon. The reality, and I'm not trying to excuse the fact that we only won one World Series in 16 seasons in Miami, which is inexcusable. You want to win more, obviously. But the reality is that not celebrating someone is different than not appreciating them. And Paul George, when he decides to go public with this, he puts the Pacers in a really weird spot because the Pacers are good people. They're like, why is Paul George doing this to us? He's moved on. He's gotten paid. And frankly, we made the right decision. Paul George, am I wrong here, Coca? What has Paul George won exactly? Do I have it right? Has he been in an NBA Finals? I'm going to say no. Has he been in a conference finals? That's actually a bigger question. Not sure, but it would be super good for the show if I could just say no. Oh, they did lose to the Heat in the conference finals. Paul George did. In the NBA Finals or conference finals? They lost in the conference finals. All right, he's been to one conference finals, so just cut that out and just say, leave it at the end of he's not been in an NBA Finals. All right. So where does this story end? With the weirdest thing. The Pacers gave in. Paul George has been back to Indiana 8 times. They haven't done one thing for him. Paul George complains publicly, and now the Pacers have said, you know what? We have a new idea. We're going to reach out to Paul George, and we're going to look to honor his accomplishments in the future. A league source told the Indy Star this. What do you think? Do you think the NBA actually called Indiana and said, hey, guys, I think you should honor Paul George when he comes back with a video? Don't be ridiculous. That is not what the league calls teams for. Not even close. The league could not give a flying rat's tinker whether or not Indiana does a tribute video for Paul George. 0. You think they're going to get involved now? Oh, you guys are getting bad press. You better do it. It's in your best interest. Let's not piss off Paul George. Give me a small break. Word comes out that the Pacers are they're not even playing each other for the rest of the year. You think they'll come back next year, fresh start, and they'll do a big video? You know what, Coca? I'm going to do a wait to see on this because we're going to get this within a year. Here's an official wait to see. The Indiana Pacers are going to do a tribute video for Paul George next year, and it's so disingenuous. But the wait to see is that they're going to do it. I think the Sixers and Paul George should start worrying about other stuff. How about worrying about the fact that your team stinks? How about worrying about the fact that you're combining with Joel Embiid to be one of the great disappointments of all time? Joel Embiid doesn't play. I think it's time for Philadelphia fans to realize now you're all caught up in the Eagles and you're all super happy that you're ignoring the fact that John Middleton is not in the market for big players anymore because he's over his skis and had to sell equity in order to pay down debt that he incurred by having payrolls too big for his revenue. You're not worried about that now. You're not worried about the fact that the Penguins may be for sale, minority stake by Fenway Sports Group, and that it turns out for John Henry, it is just business. Oh, we got 30 minutes. Maybe worried about that if you're in Pittsburgh. That would have been way better, Coke, if I were talking about the Flyers, wouldn't it? My brain is funny today. I have no idea why I just talked about the Penguins when we're talking about Philly. Or you could be focused on the Eagles and they're in the Super Bowl and ignoring the reality that the Sixers have under Josh Harris, who also owns the Commanders, who's done well with the Commanders, poorly with the Sixers currently. They've paid Joel Embiid $20 million this year. $20 million not to play. 32 games the guy's missed. 32 games. He's only played in 13 of the 45. Joel Embiid is in the middle of this huge deal. Like 4 years, $248 million is left to pay Joel Embiid. And do you think it's going to get better? The thing is, things don't change. When a player is what a player is, it is the rare moment that they can have a late career improvement Roger Clemens like. And normally it's going to take needles. I got one more thing on the Sixers, please. Do you remember the whole process Sixers situation? When you choose to get into bed with a player, and that's what the Sixers have done with Joel Embiid, and you do it on the come. And doing it on the come means that, oh, he's MVP. He's won an MVP. He looks to be a dominant player. But on our left side, we have injuries and we have lack of continuous performance. We have the constant worry. It's the way I felt about every pitcher. And the reason I would feel that way about a pitcher is I had a hard time ever watching any pitcher pitch without thinking, okay, it's Dravecky time. His arm's going to fall off. His ligament is going to split and tear. Somehow running to first base, he'll pull a hamstring. I was always concerned about every player. Some players get injured more than others, except my concern was always spread evenly. I didn't worry about a guy who had one Tommy John saying, oh my God, he's a pitch away from a second Tommy John and he likely can't recover. I didn't worry about someone who has soft tissue injuries all the time and, oh, they're running to first base. Please don't run hard. You're going to get hurt. I was an equal opportunity worrier. In basketball, I would assume that there is a different type of worry. If you've got LeBron James, you say to yourself, I'm worried about Father Time. I'm going to lose, but this guy plays. If you've got Joel Embiid, you're looking at his sort of 7-foot frame. You're looking at Greg Oden. You're looking at all the other tall people who get injured and really have a hard time staying on the court. And then you realize, oh my God, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is one of the greatest specimens of all time. You can't trick yourself into believing that the end result is ever going to be different than what the current result is. But you do. You do because you assume, all right, next season, that's our season. Let's really go for it. Let's get ourselves in a position where we've got a big 2, a big 3. We're going to bring in Paul George. We're going to match him up. And that will end up being our ticket to finishing the process. And you make the same mistake again, and it compounds as the player gets older and gets more hurt. And it's the weirdest thing that owners and presidents do. The double downing on bad decisions in order to wait for them to be good so they can have their day in front of the media to say we were right. It is irrational. I've done it. Everybody's doing it. I would think you should stop if you're Philadelphia. Let me close the loop if you don't mind, Coca, because I opened the door and I apologize for that, for my brain, because that's my brain. I want to close the loop on the Pittsburgh Penguins And I want to say that while it was a big story the other day that John Henry and Fenway Sports Group is going to try to sell the Penguins. And then when you read the article, it was, oh, they're actually looking to sell a minority share. And then you realize this is what they do as Fenway Sports Group. They like having control, but they don't need to own that much of it, just enough to have control. And you can take advantage of an increased valuation. They bought in at a pretty high number from Mew, and you can take money off the table and use it to either pay down debt or use it to acquire other assets. This is not anything out of the ordinary. Fenway Sports Group is no different than individual owners. Stephen Ross of the Dolphins, who's taking money off the table by selling 10% of the team. It happens all the time. When the numbers get big, you are advised by your financial advisors, your estate planners, whoever it is that you've got with you, your bankers. You're always advised, take some money off the table, let some of it ride. But this way you lock in profit. And if you're Fenway Sports Group and you can lock in a return on investment, you have the ability to go to other people with capital, other firms with capital. You get to show a track record of performance, of return on investment, and you end up therefore being able to get access to more money at lower interest rates, which allows you to do more deals, buying more assets. It's full Yertle the Turtle time where you are the king of everything you can see. And John Henry puts on the spectacles and he can see a lot of stuff. So it doesn't mean that they are getting out of the hockey business. There's no reason for Gary Bettman to panic. Nothing personal pick of the day. Before we get to that, Coke, I got a problem. I don't know if you can tell during the show. Here's my distraction. This started about 3 weeks ago, and I've ignored it, but I can't ignore it anymore. I'm having a weird situation with my smell. And remember, 4 years ago, I lost my taste and smell. I'm getting some sort of smell back, but all I'm smelling is rancid smells. And it used to be that every once in a while I could smell a rancid smell, but I would also miss them. Now it's all I smell all the time. So I'm driving in the car because we're doing a sporting class today. After the show, I'll be doing Lebitard live, and then we're going to record sporting class with Pablo that I assume will be released on Friday the 31st. And I'm driving in the car, Coke, and I almost pulled over because I was nauseated by the smell in the car. I thought there was a dead animal, or I thought there was some sort of food that I'd left in the car, which would be weird because I don't eat in the car, nor do I let anyone eat in the car. And I let it go. And then I got to my apartment and I smelled something awful. It smelled like sewage to me, like there was a backup in the toilet. So I went around to the bathrooms and flushed them, and everything looked fine, and it had all just been cleaned. Now I'm sitting here doing the show, and I'm so distracted live at 8:28. If you're on DraftKings Network, it's 10:28. I smell something so bad that I can't even think straight. And I don't know if it's coming through the vent or if I'm making it up. And so I'm going to have to call downstairs and have the super come up and say, do you smell this? I'm not going to stop the show, Coca, but I'm literally nauseous while I'm doing the show. If anyone has any suggestions on what to do about that, I'm willing to take them because I'd rather have no smell than what I have right now. Okay, nothing personal pick of the day. Thank you for that little side note. Sorry about that, Coca. We are 10-10. We crawled our way back to 500 with our second win in a row. Remember the whole story of Portland and the Bucks last night? And I said that it actually is more meaningful for Portland and the Bucks because Lillard's over it and doesn't care. But people in Portland are like, hey, let's get this game. We'll show him. Portland, they were getting 6 points. They didn't need to be getting. They could have been giving 6 points. They beat the Bucks, I think, by 13, 125-112. That is a win. Tonight, we've got a game. Today could be one of the last few games the Phoenix Suns play without Jimmy Butler. Can you believe what we started reading? One of the ESPN NBA insiders said, oh, I don't care what Sampson said. The Heat are willing to take less for Butler. They're desperate. Just get rid of him. I, of course, had the opposite view, which is they should stand strong. They should tell Jimmy to pound sand and tell the teams who are trying to poach you. You're not going to poach me. So maybe the Phoenix Suns are trying to figure out a way, except they've got an untradeable Matt Ishbia special in Bradley Beal. They're getting 1.5 points from the disappointing Timberwolves, who really, when are we going to get the results of that A-Rod, Glenn Taylor arbitration? We have a ton of wait to seize about that. The arbitration hearing was like a month ago. We should be hearing something very soon about whether or not A-Rod is going to get to buy that team at a $1.5 billion valuation. Meanwhile, the T-Wolves, who went all the way, was it last year, Coca? They went to the conference finals and they had that good year and then fell short. I don't remember what year it was. It may have been last year against the Mavericks that they were in the conference finals. Either way, seems like a bit of a step backwards. We're taking the Suns plus 1.5 at home versus the Minnesota Timberwolves. All right, when we come back, we are going to review a Oscar nominee and then talk about the genius. You want to talk about giving flowers and not wanting to, but just tipping your cap? That's how I feel about Jake Paul. I don't want to give him flowers, but don't I have to? We'll talk about it after the break. Welcome back to Nothing Personal. It's David Sampson. Thank you for downloading, subscribing, for all that you do for us. We appreciate you. I'm trying to watch all the Oscar nominees. You know, I was very upset about the documentary nominees, so I'm watching what they are. One of them is called Box Diaries. I watched it yesterday, very early in the morning, like at 2, 3 in the morning, Coca. It's on, I want to say it's on Paramount Plus. Box Diaries is a movie about a Japanese woman who was sexually assaulted when she was 24, 25 years old as a journalist, and she was assaulted by a very important man in Japan. And she found it very difficult to get justice, and so she decided to film and follow her own quest for justice, for relief, for change in Japan as it relates to sexual assault and violence. Basically, she's a journalist who documented her own journalism in a documentary that is equal parts shocking, equal parts sad, equal parts your jaw is just open thinking to yourself, how did she do this? How did she have the strength to do this documentary that shows her unbelievably, I can't think of the word. What's the word when you open yourself up? Vulnerable. Thank you, Coca. You're right in there today. I mean, you are on it. It shows her vulnerable in a way that you don't often see on camera. It is a documentary that you have to watch. It's important to understand that outside of our country, where we are obviously singularly focused about things that are happening and laws that are happening and issues you have with the president or don't have with the president and what's going on with the government and what's going on with women and men and assault and battery and harassment, thinking that are we alone? Is this a country issue? And you realize that the way, and I've reviewed a bunch of movies like this, the way that women are treated around the world is just unacceptable. It's pathetic. It's staggering. Box Diaries. Check it out. Okay. I don't want to say okay. Cut that out, please. 4869. Box Diaries. Let's talk about Jake Paul. Did everyone see that? I think everyone did. I think it has 1,000 million views. Jake Paul tweeted or X'd or Instagrammed or TikToked or Twitched or twerks, whatever, a picture that looked really mean of him looking at his brother. I assume it's photoshopped, although they could have done a photo shoot. But either way, you had Logan Paul, you had Jake Paul looking at each other as though Jake Paul was announcing a fight against Logan Paul. This social media announcement created this unbelievable fury that, oh my God, the brothers are going to fight. The brothers themselves said, this is the moment you've waited a decade for. And I was thinking, who did? What decade? When did I want to see two brothers fight? All I got to do is go to my brother's house. I mean, I don't have a brother with kids, so I wouldn't be able to go to my brother's house. And I actually don't have, I could go to my sister's house to see brothers fight. That could work. Who wants to see that? You think that Jake Paul and Logan Paul would go after each other? First man to first blood wins? Or do you think that they are the most brilliant businessmen in all of sports? They make Dana White look like Dana Plato. They have it figured out in a way that you simply have no alternative but to tip the chapeau. It turns out that it probably isn't even a fight between Logan Paul and Jake Paul. It turns out that they may have been promoting some reality series. It turns out they may be promoting something on Max that is not a one event, the way Jake Paul did the Tyson fight on Netflix, which we talked about earlier this week, maybe, or last week, about how many subscribers they added and how many people were a part of that and why that was so big for Netflix. They take incoming calls, Jake Paul and Logan Paul. Listen, we just want to be associated with whatever it is you're doing, because what you're doing is getting attention. You are getting the demographics that we crave. You are getting the retention that we dream about. You want to do a reality show in. You want to help and involve your brother in. You want to do it around your family, your girlfriend's girlfriend, boyfriend. We don't care if it's Jake Paul adjacent and we can just have you make an appearance and look around. We are buying it. We're green lighting it, sight unseen. That's power. To get something made that generally has a higher than 69% chance of being total crap, that's when you know you've got the power. Think about like the movies Kevin Hart does or some of the movies Adam Sandler does. Talk about power. Jamie Foxx and Cameron Diaz, power. You're going to watch a reality show with Jake Paul? Yeah, you are. Am I? No, but I'll read about it. We had to wait to see about this, Coca. We had to wait to see that Jake Paul would announce his next fight by the end of January. I was going to take a yes on that because of this Logan Paul announcement. I'm not sure if I can take a yes on that. Wait to see. I mean, it's not the end of January yet. We've got 2 more days, so I wouldn't take a yes or no. Unless, of course, he had announced a fight for sure, but he may have just announced like a Thanksgiving dinner with his brother. It's all very unclear. Being unclear can be strategically important when you are negotiating a contract. Sometimes you want to be purposefully vague. You don't want to answer a question. You don't want to give away your negotiating position. Sometimes that's because you don't actually know what you want or what you're trying to get out of the negotiation, which, as you know, is a bad thing. You have to know what you want before you start negotiating, or you're going to lose. I promise you. There are times when being clear is all that matters. In a relationship, a friendship, a business partnership, a negotiation, there are moments that you need clarity. Stuart Sternberg is the owner of the Tampa Bay Rays, and Stuart Sternberg has been crystal clear to those in the know from the beginning of his tenure that he had a great interest in moving the team out of Tampa, out of St. Pete, not to Tampa, totally outside of Florida. There is nobody in baseball who doesn't know that. Nobody inside baseball. People don't talk about it, but I can. And that felt good to say. You can want to move your team all you want, but you can't move them without 23 votes. 23 votes are required to allow relocation. And that's only if you bring your relocation to a vote, and that only happens if MLB gives you permission to seek relocation, which only happens when they want to give you leverage to get a ballpark in your current city/state, or if they really recognize you're going to have to seek relocation, and they're going to need reports from different cities in order to establish which one they're going to let you relocate to versus which one they want to keep on ice for other relocation or expansion. This has been going on in all sports for 100 years. Stuart Sternberg said yesterday that the team, and I quote, meaning the Tampa Bay Rays, is still deciding what to do as it relates to building their new $1.3 billion ballpark in St. Petersburg. Do you recall, and wouldn't it be great with more resources, Coca, if we could go right back to the Nothing Personal episode where we talked about the agreement that the Tampa Bay Rays had with the St. Petersburg City Council, with the county, with the financing, the public-private partnership, and how it was celebrated that day as the deal is done. There will be a new ballpark. We got the ability to develop real estate in St. Petersburg. We are good to go. And then it all went to hell in a hockey basket. I think it went to hell in a handbasket. I was going to say HE double hockey sticks. I'm just giving you an insight into my brain on a Wednesday morning, 41 minutes in. I was going to say HE double hockey sticks, which is code for hell, which I don't want to say. And then I ended up mixing it, which is what I do sometimes. Hi, my name is David Sampson. Okay, we're good. I can keep going with the story. We did a whole story, a whole segment. Fine. That deal falls apart because there's some sort of delay in floating the bonds. Do you remember this? Except the county and the city did float the bonds. Everything's ready to roll. They gave permission to float the bonds. Now they're just waiting for Tampa to do what they're supposed to do under their obligations of this signed agreement with the public. And they've got till March 31st to do it. What Tampa's doing, and Stu Sternberg is standing up and doing it, is saying, hold on. We've got till March 31st. We've got 2 months. We are not going to acknowledge that we are going to do anything in terms of our obligations under this contract until you agree to help us pay for overruns, because we can't move in until 2029. Until you agree to take the money that you're using to refurbish the Trop and give it to us for our ballpark deal to help bridge the gap. Until you sit down and agree to put more money in, we are going to stay silent. And in fact, we may meet the media, we may do a show where we say, we're not doing it, period. What kind of leverage does Stu Sternberg have, would you suspect? You think he spoke to Rob Manfred, the commissioner, and said, Rob, here's our plan. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to play hardball because we don't really want to put in extra money into the stadium in St. Petersburg. And Rob would say back, wait a minute, Stu, you never wanted to do a stadium period in St. Petersburg. To which Stu would say back to Rob, yeah, but we got all this public money, and look at all the money that my partners are making on the real estate here. It really does make sense to do this. And then Rob would say to Stu, then just do it. And Stu would say, yeah, but let's see if we can get one more pound of flesh. Just one more. It's a brilliant strategy. Of course, Sternberg is going to say that they are still deciding, because what that means is we're still negotiating. What it means is we are not going to leave a dollar on the table in public financing. And you know what? Bless his heart. He's not the only owner doing it. Some owners do it quietly. Stu now is doing it a little more publicly, doing good guy, bad guy with Rob Manfred, who flies into Tampa and St. Pete during the winter meetings and makes sure that everyone knows, hey, we've got you. We love Tampa. We love St. Pete. We love the area. We want the Rays here. It's all going to work out fine in the end. And if it's not working out, it's just not the end. Meanwhile, they wink, wink, call up Stu and say, all right, go hard. Go hard right now. Get out there in public. Have your presidents, co-presidents, Brian and Matt, send some letters. But then you're going to have to drop the hammer because you're the owner. Meanwhile, the St. Petersburg mayor keeps meeting with Stuart Sternberg, They met last week. They could meet this week. Those meetings are hysterical to me. Sternberg says, just a reminder, we're not going to cover the costs of opening in 29. We didn't have it in the budget. And then the mayor will say, well, we don't have it in the budget to pay for overruns. As a matter of fact, the only way we got a deal was that you have to pay for overruns, which is a really common thing. And Sternberg said, these are not overruns. Overruns is when we decide to change the couch or the carpet, or we move outlets around, or we change the size of the clubhouse once design documents have been approved, written, and funded. Those are overruns. Those we'll promise to pay. But this is the overall cost of the ballpark, to which the public then says, because they said it to me many times, change the design of your ballpark. Design to the budget you have. And then the team says, but we want these bells and whistles. We want these things for the players, for the fans, for the players, for the players. That was a funny one, wasn't it, Coca? When the owner of the Orioles was talking about the $400 to $600 million in renovations to Camden Yards, which is now 30 years old, which is hard to imagine, more than 30 years old. And he said, while being interviewed, and we played part of that interview on yesterday's show, the part we didn't play is when he said, yeah, we're going to put a ton of money into Camden, and we're doing it for player amenities. We're doing it for player comfort. There's going to be some changes in player parking and player access. Oh, yeah, we're also going to try some things with capacity that would be good for the fans. Code word for we're lowering the capacity so we can increase ticket prices, make it harder to get tickets, and try to get people to come into some standing room sections so we can overall have more revenue in the ballpark. That's what it's code for. Okay. We got to cover something else, if that's okay. I want to mention before we go that some numbers came out with the NFL yesterday. And they're getting a lot of attention. We may even talk about it on Sporting Class. And this is what you wait for after games are played like championship games. The Bills and Chiefs ended up with 57.7 million viewers, which is absolutely amazing. The most watched AFC championship game in the last, certainly this century. Some people say going back to 2000 and to 1988. Very interesting, because the NFL can position this as great news for the AFC in the late window. The NFC numbers were not as great. They only drew about $44 million for that 44 million viewers, for that Commanders-Eagles game. And that is down about 20%. And so how do we do a PR statement? What do we get as our message points out there so that everyone knows that actually things are fine with football? And the answer is, it doesn't really matter. And John Skipper's tried to tell you this. I've tried to tell you this. It's really, really good for press releases to say how many viewers are watching. But do we really know? And sometimes the way they count it, it's the weirdest way. And then you've got to come up with, oh, but we're up 8% in this demographic, even though we're down 10% overall. There is no issue in the NFL. When you look at their media deals, when you look at their engagement across platforms, when you look at their local revenue, their national revenue, when you look at the value of their teams, there is nothing but roses and butterflies and unicorns for the NFL. And anyone who is latching on to these numbers and saying, oh, this is the sign. One championship game draws more than an entire World Series. Practically. A short World Series, it probably does, Coca. As a matter of fact, the Dodgers over the Yankees, I would bet you that they didn't draw 57 million total viewers in the World Series for that entire World Series. For crying out loud, the CFP championship game that we just watched this past January 20th, that only drew 22 million viewers, which is still an unbelievable number, by the way, as compared to other sports. But the NFC Championship drew double that. So I want everyone to just take a breath and not panic and not talk about Chiefs fatigue and no one's watching because it's the Chiefs, because all that narrative is wrong. The Super Bowl ratings will come in and it will still be 9 figures of people watching. It's incredible. The NFL is in a position where they can announce whatever they want in terms of ratings. And the true reality is that the impact is zero, one way or the other. The beautiful part when you are in that position of power where something that so many people seem to care about that really doesn't matter to you, that is when you know that you are the league that is in the premier position. The rest of us have to worry about everything because it's just business. Good luck, NFL. We'll be back tomorrow. This is nothing personal.